Hey guys, it's Destiny, and today we're going to be talking about Sushang, who is actually one of my favorite 4-star characters, and she kind of just fell into the screen there, but we're going to be going over Sushang, why I think she's great, and give you guys a complete guide to Sushang here. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. So to begin, I want to go over Sushang's kit, what light cones I recommend, and more. To begin with Sushang's base kit. Sushang's basic attack just does physical damage to an enemy, the basic stuff. Her skill is pretty unique though, and this is where we get into why I think Sushang is a pretty good character. Sushang is able to do physical damage to enemies, and she also has a thing called sword stance. Sword stance is basically these little ticks that hit the enemies, and she is able to accumulate sword stance as you play with her in the battle. What sword stance does is it deals additional physical damage equal to a percentage of Sushang's attack to the enemy. If the enemy is inflicted with weakness break, sword stance is guaranteed to trigger. This is really good because enemies can be easily weakness broken with Sushang, as she's able to do the sword stance. Does quite a lot to the meter, and so does her ultimate. As for her ultimate, this is really good because this basically makes her a mini Zila, if you will. Instead of having resurgence, Sushang is able to advance her action forward with her ultimate, which can be pretty good if you're able to get her ultimate gauge up quite frequently, since she'll be able to basically just summon her Phoenix, which I think her ultimate animation is quite adorable. She summons the Phoenix literally crushes the enemy, possibly knocks them out, and now she'll be able to act immediately again, which can result in a lot of DPS output. In addition, Sushang's attack will be increased by 22% or higher depending on how much you go into leveling up her ultimate, and using her skill has 2 extra chances to trigger sword stance for 2 turns. Sword stance triggered from the extra chances deals 50% of the original damage. Pretty good as well. As for her talent, this is pretty good as well. When an enemy on the field has their weakness meter broken, Sushang will be able to increase her speed by a percentage for 2 turns. This is really good because now Sushang has the potential to possibly go multiple times in a turn, depending on how much speed you're able to get on your Sushang. Overall, her base kit is pretty good, and I feel like Sushang is pretty unique, at least with doing the ultimates, being able to advance her action forward, because when you're able to pull off that skill, get her ultimate, do her ultimate, and then do another skill, once again, she will be able to output a lot of damage doing this combo. As for light cones, I recommend her best in slot, which is swordplay. Swordplay is actually her 4-star signature light cone. For each time she hits the same target, the damage dealt increases by a percentage, stacking up to 5 times. This effect will be dispelled when the wearer changes targets. This is pretty good because sword stance does count for this, so basically the damage will be increased with those ticks as well, which can allow you to stack it up pretty frequently and pretty quickly. So overall, I think this light cone is really good just for increasing Sushang's damage by a really good amount, and being able to target single enemies is pretty good as well. The next light cone I would recommend for her second assault, which I would recommend for all free-to-play who do not have swordplay, is Cruising in the Stellar Sea. Cruising in the Stellar Sea increases your crit rate, and it also increases your crit rate against enemies with HP less than or equal to 50% by an extra 10%. So you can effectively get about 20% crit rate against certain enemies once their HP is lower than that 50%. When the wearer defeats an enemy, now their attack is also increased by 25% for 2 turns. This is really good because now Sushang will be able to have increased crits if you are looking into building the usual crit rate and crit damage combo on her. Then this will be pretty good since you'll be able to increase that crit rate so you can focus more on your crit damage body piece, your crit damage substats, and so on, assuming you have enough crit rate. And getting that attack increase can also be pretty nice. The last weapon I recommend is River Flows in the Spring, which you can actually get from the Forgotten Hall shop. After entering battle, you increase your speed by 8% and your damage by 12%. When the wearer takes damage, this effect will disappear, and the effect will resume after the end of the wearer's next turn. This light cone is decent, I would say. I would not personally recommend it over the other 2 I mentioned, especially not over cruising in this letter C personally. Like if you don't have cruising in this letter C yet, then I'd possibly recommend just use river flows in the spring. But from what I have seen and also been able to play with, I personally think that swordplay once again is the top that you would want, the absolute best light cone for her. Then you would do cruising in the Stellar Sea, and then you would do river flows in the spring. But if you don't have cruising in the Stellar Sea yet, then you can opt for this light cone here. It's not too big of a deal. I just think that the speed increase, it can be nice, although she already can increase her own speed. Depending on how much speed you already have, then that light cone is kind of, in my opinion, a little bit irrelevant, because then you'll possibly have enough speed just through her kit. But if this extra 8% of speed will allow you to be able to get enough speed in order to attack twice in a turn, then that can possibly be a really, really good option for you. So at that point, I would recommend river flows in the spring. The only reason, once again, is I just feel like it doesn't do enough in comparison to the other light cones. But if this is the only option you have, then this is just as fine as well. You can use this instead. Now for her traces, we have multiple traces, as you can see. This is the first one. I have no idea how to say this, and I feel like if I try to pronounce it, I will brutally butcher this. If someone in the comments down below can tell me how to say this, I'd appreciate it. But I don't know, my brain is telling me to say glueless, but I know this does not say glue. It's like I'm moving the L and then I'm just getting rid of the I, then moving this U right here. Let's just go with this. Let's just go with what it does. When current HP percent is 50% or lower, reduces the chance of being attacked by enemies. This trace is okay, but I absolutely would hold off on getting this trace. I just don't think it's as necessary. The attack increase is nice, and the max HP increase can be okay, but I don't think this trace is actually you need to do it immediately. I would actually hold off on this trace right here and get this trace instead. This is the trace I would recommend getting first. I believe, all you need is Ascension 4, which means once you're TL level 40, go ahead and grab this bad boy. This is really, really good because once again, it's really easy for her to be able to get the sword stance since she's really good at weakness breaking enemies that are weak to physical, which means that you'll be able to effectively use sword stance pretty often, and this will be able to stack to that 20%. Whether or not the enemy is still alive by the point you have 20% is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is that you're getting these stacks. Granted, the enemy quite literally might not be alive because Sushang's Phoenix will destroy them. Now we have Vanquisher. Yes, the first thing I can actually pronounce perfectly fine. After using a basic attacker skill, if there are enemies on the field with weakness break, her action is advanced forward by 15%. Now your action is advanced forward again, which is never a bad thing. Being able to advance forward your actions is always beneficial in this game, since you'll be able to possibly move again before the enemy, which can be crucial in the case the enemy defeats you or you defeat them. You never know. But this is pretty good because you just have to use your basic attack or your skill, and the enemies, if they are weakness broken, once again, she's really good at weakness breaking, so this will likely always happen. If not, I mean, it probably will always happen, as I've stated. So this is really, really good. I would recommend Vanquisher after Riposta over here, Riposte, whatever. I would recommend it after this one. And then the last one I would recommend is this one right here. I just think this one is kind of whatever. It's not bad in the case of you really don't want Sushang to be attacked. But if I'm being honest, when it comes to taunt values from what we have seen, typically speaking, preservation class characters and even abundance characters get attacked way more often, and destruction characters, than hunt characters. So they're already not going to be attacked as often, but they still will end up getting attacked eventually. So I guess this can be good in that case, especially if her HP is pretty low. But personally, I'm just not a big fan of this. I would once again recommend this trace over here first, then I'd recommend Vanquisher. Now for what I recommend leveling up when it comes to her traces right here, just for leveling up either her talent, her normal, and so on. Personally, I would recommend her ultimate and her skill the most, since this is where she's getting a huge chunk of her damage. Her talent is pretty good, you can get more speed, but personally, I don't think, like, it does matter. I won't say it doesn't matter. It definitely does matter. But I would heavily put a focus on doing a lot of damage with her ultimate, since this is a good multiplier right here, just based off of level 5. So I think this is a really good multiplier, and I think that the ultimate is really good to invest into. So is her skill. I would recommend probably the normal attack last. I would recommend probably the talent over the normal attack, since that speed can matter quite a lot, since you ideally, if you want to get Sushang to attack twice in a turn without, you know, the ultimate advancing her action forward, this could be really good for that purpose, because then she's just outputting more damage. As for her Eidolons, now her Eidolons, I would recommend a few of them if you do end up getting multiple copies of Sushang. I know a lot of us are going to be pulling on Jing Yuan, so if you do get your Sushang and you get Eidolons, you should probably be really happy about that, because her Eidolons are really good. First Eidolon, she uses her skill, and against a weakness broken enemy, she gets back a skill point. As I've been saying repeatedly through this video, Sushang breaks weakness meters really fast, really quick. Really quick and really fast are basically me saying the same thing. Point is that she breaks them really fast, as I've been saying throughout the video. So you'll be able to get these skill points right after using her skill, which means now she becomes less skill point hungry, which results in more skill points for your other characters on your team. This is always a benefit. We do use our skills pretty often throughout fights, so this is always a good Eidolon to have, and this is definitely a bonus if you can get it. Her second Eidolon, after triggering Sword Stance, the damage taken by Sushang is reduced by 20% for a turn. This is just nice to have because now she's just taking less damage. It could be really good for having her stay alive a bit longer. The fourth one, her break effect increases by 40%. This, in my opinion, I'm not going to say it's a game changer, but it is really, really good, especially if you're making a break Sushang. What break allows you to do is when that weakness meter is broken, which as I've been saying she's really good at, when it's broken, now she's doing more damage from that big hit that happens when the bar is broken. From what you guys have probably seen throughout playing through the game, when you break that weakness meter, you will do a break effect like damage hit. It will only typically be like that one hit, but that hit is really good because it is really strong. It's usually a really high number depending on how much break effect you have on your characters. Physical is allowed to do quite a lot of damage with their break attacks, which makes Sushang a perfect character to possibly look into a break build because she's able to do so much damage with breaking those toughness meters. Now for her last one, she's able to have her talent speed boost stack up to 2 times instead of just once. Additionally, after entering battle, she gains immediately a stack of her talent speed boost. This is really good because as we saw before, just with the talent level that I have currently with Eidolon 6, that she is able to have a 34% increase, which can be really good for effectively getting more speed, which once again, if she's able to have enough speed, then she'll be able to also attack twice in the turn order, or multiple times even, instead of just that one. So this is really good for being able to just output more damage as well, even though like inherently speed doesn't increase your stats for doing more damage, it will still increase your potential to hit more damage on the enemies throughout your turns. So this is really good, and if you do get her 6th one, not bad either. This is pretty good. Personally, if you were to have a stopping point, I would say the 4th one is probably her best one, once again for the break. But her 6th one could be pretty good just for having more speed, depending on how much speed you need, because ultimately you would want the speed boots, which I will get into relics into a second, but having those speed boots can be pretty good. So any of these are honestly really good to have, and also they're really pretty to look at, because just look at these. This one in particular is my favorite because I'm not really sure what's going on. I'm assuming she's taking a nap, and I really like her little eye cover she has here. I might get one myself. Look exactly like this. I really like it. Now for relics here, I have a few recommendations, and it also depends on what build you're going for. Now, if you are going to go for that break build I've been mentioning, you might want to look at Thief of Shooting Meteor. This set is pretty good because you increase your break effect by 16%, you increase your break effect again by 16%, which means you are effectively getting roughly 32% break effect. I think I did the math right. Yes, I did. I did indeed do the math right. Quick math. When the wearer inflicts weakness break on an enemy, you regenerate 3 energy. This is pretty nice because once again, I've been saying, I think I said it at least 5 times in this video now, she's good at weakness breaking, which means you're going to be regenerating energy pretty fast at that, assuming the enemies are weak to physical, which now means more ultimate, which means more chicken on your screen, more phoenix attacking the enemies on your screen. So that's always a bonus, I would say. So this set's just really good for that, and for the headpiece, you can't really pick the main stat for that. So for substats, I would possibly recommend trying to get some attack, some speed, some, if you do want the crits, getting the crits. Now, I will say, from what I have seen and what I have heard, crit does not actually matter when it comes to breaking. Break effect just has its own thing. So when you break that meter, there you go, that's your damage by your break effect percentage. You don't have to worry as much about your crits, but you will want the crits in the case of doing damage outside of breaking. So if you want her to do kind of like hybrid damage, you might actually want to do a 2-piece of this break piece and then possibly do a 2-piece of Champion of Streetwise Boxing. The reason why this is because now you have physical damage increase and you also will still have some break effect added on. Now, of course, if you just get a lot of break substats and you want to possibly still do that hybrid, but you get a lot of break substats, now you can look at doing a 4-piece Champion of Streetwise Boxing set instead, because if you have enough break substats, then you might not really care for that additional 32% with the 4-piece. Now, if you don't care about break at all, and you mainly just want to do best damage potential possible, then I would recommend Champion of Streetwise Boxing. And for substats, you would ideally want the attacks, the crits, and so on with this stat. Of course, if you want to still do break, as I've mentioned, you want to get some break substats, possibly a break link rope or attack link rope, up to you with that one. For feats, I would recommend ideally speed, because going twice in that turn order can be really, really beneficial, especially because she's able to increase her speed on her own. So now the potential of going twice in that turn order is more possible. So speed boots, really good. Or if you don't have speed boots, go with attack percent. And then for the hands, of course, attack. You mainly want to do attack. The body piece, you can kind of do what you want. I would recommend, though, with this set, either crit rate or crit damage. It just depends on what you have in your substats and what you're missing. If you have a lot of substats with a crit rate, cool, go for crit damage on body. You have a lot of crit damage substats, cool, go for crit rate on body. You just got to do the opposite of what you're missing, or the opposite rather of what you already have a bunch of. As for her last set I recommend, it is Musketeer Wild Wheat Felt Hat. This is a felt hat. I did not know that. It does actually look pretty felty though, so that's pretty nice. You increase your attack by 12%, and then you increase your speed by 6%, your basic attack damage by 10%. This is okay. It's just honestly okay. Like, as a beginner set, sure, or like an early game set, sure. I wouldn't make this my main stat though. I would heavily recommend the break effects set just for doing a lot of break damage, so you get that big burst of damage from breaking. Or I'd recommend the Champion of Streetwise Boxing, because you'll just do more damage overall in comparison to the Musketeer Wild Wheat set. So Musketeer Wild Wheat, it's okay, but it's not the best. I mean, it's doable, of course, but if you're looking at making your Sushang the best Sushang she has ever been, then I would recommend either looking at Champion of Streetwise Boxing or the break set. So it's really up to you on what set you want to run, but I am giving you guys my recommendations and why. Of course, with the main stats, once again, you want speed with boots, you want crit rate body piece or crit damage, and for the link rope, you either want break effect or attack, depending on what you want to do, and of course for your plantar sphere, you want physical damage, since that'll be the most ideal. If you can't get physical damage, I would just use attack percent until you have physical damage, but once you get that physical damage, go for that. Another funny thing I'd like to mention real quick is with the Cavern of Corrosion, Path of Jabbing Punch, what's really funny is they literally put Champion of Streetwise Boxing and the break set together in the same cavern. I think they honestly made this for Sushang. Like, I genuinely believe they thought in the back of their heads, let's make the perfect Cavern of Corrosion for Sushang. So honestly, whatever of these two you get the most and whichever one you get better stats on, I would go for that set. If you're really against the break set though, of course go for Champion. But it's pretty cool that they did actually put both of these sets that I recommend the most in the same cavern. So either way, you're winning with whatever set you get, which is really good for grinding purposes and just farming up these pieces. Now let's go over team comps. Team comps, you could do quite a lot of things, honestly, or just general concepts. You don't need these exact characters, but the general concepts will apply. So Sushang, your main DPS, you can have a secondary DPS, really up to you. I think those she'll be able to perform quite well. Now what you can do is a hyper carry comp. If you have Ting Yun and Bronya, you could possibly do a hyper carry comp, but I will say this comp can possibly be quite skill point hungry if you're not wary of who's using the skill points. So I would be a little cautious of that. And of course, for your last slot, if you were to do a team like this, you need either a shielder or a healer. I think Japard would be really, really good for this purpose, but if you don't have Japard, Fire MC would be just as good. If you want to use a healer instead, that is perfectly fine. I just prefer someone who can shield all the allies just in case, because these characters are heavily reliant on Sushang doing the damage, and then you of course need someone in the back who can protect these characters. So this is one team comp I can think of just right off the bat. Another team comp I could think of is if you want to not go the hyper carry route and you want to go possibly a healer and shielder route, that is also fine, which means you can possibly do a comp like this, which can be Fire MC, Natasha, Ting Yun, and Sushang. Fire MC can do a okay amount of damage themselves. Natasha can of course provide heals. Fire MC shields. Ting Yun can of course buff. If you don't have Ting Yun, Asta works. If you don't have Asta, which, wait, no, you can't not have Asta. I'm sorry, Asta. I completely forgot about you for a second here. But Asta, of course we all get Asta. But Asta can work as well depending on who you have. You have now Fire, and there is a certain light cone with that Harmony class characters can use, which can possibly buff up Fire MC in this class. That could be pretty good to consider, and now you have 2 physical, 2 fire. Natasha of course heals, but you do want possibly a buffer character who can possibly make it so that Sushang's speed is either increased, her action value can possibly be more, like with Bronya can advance her forward again. So if you skill ultimate skill, and then you have enough skill points, let's say ideally you have 5 available. Skill, ultimate skill. 2 skill points up, Bronya's skill. Now Sushang is up and running, and now you have 2 skill points left. Unless your Bronya's E1, and then Bronya is able to give a skill point back, but let's assume that she is just E0. Now you could skill again. If you possibly have your ultimate ready, now you can ultimate again, and now you can literally skill again. So now you have effectively used technically all your skill points, but you were able to go numerous times in the turn order. At that point, Sushang attacked 6 times in the turn order. You can also use this with Ting Yun, by the way, if your Sushang has enough speed, because Ting Yun is able to help her regenerate her ultimate. So what this means is that assuming you have the speed boots, assuming you have enough speed on Sushang, and she goes twice in that turn order. Once again, 5 skill points. Skill, ultimate skill. Ting Yun, let's assume that she has her ultimate. You could possibly skill on Sushang if you want with Ting Yun, because now you're getting a damage buff. You don't have to, but if you do, that's perfectly fine. It's the same thing, and now you possibly use her ultimate in the case Sushang did not have enough energy regeneration from her skills. Then now you could possibly have your skill up and ready, or rather your ultimate up and ready, and now you could do it again. Skill, ultimate skill. So effectively, once again, you are going 6 times. You're doing technically 6 hits in the turn order. This could be pretty good to consider. Once again, though, that order of what I just described is quite skill point hungry. You would have to think about it when you are trying to do something like that, because you're essentially using most of your skill points, if not all your skill points. Welts can be pretty good as a partner as well, because if your Sushang once again is fast enough, you can keep delaying the enemy's order with Welt. Welt can be a pretty nice teammate just overall as a debuffer, but ideally with Sushang, you of course would want a healer, of course you would want a shielder. Another partner that could possibly be good is maybe Serval. Serval could be nice because Serval does DOT, damage over time, with her shock, which means now Serval is able to just help whittle down enemies with DOT. Sushang is able to weakness break them when she weakness breaks them. Now she'll be able to inflict her own sort of bleed. So now you have double DOT going on with this sort of comp, and of course Serval can do additional damage to enemies. with her own kit and her own abilities. So this is just pretty good to consider as well. So there are plenty of partners with Sushang, honestly. I think she's a pretty flexible character. Consider her your main DPS, as she'll be able to output a lot of damage assuming you build her correctly. And of course, who wouldn't want to build this character? She is just absolutely adorable. One of my favorite characters for sure. And honestly, I think I've gone over almost, if not everything. I feel like I went over everything. I'm just kind of doing this and hoping I went over everything. But let's just say for this, I did. And Sushang is also confused if I did go over it, but I think I went over everything you guys need to know about Sushang here. Once again, one of my favorite characters. If you guys do get her, I would highly encourage you to build her. Consider using either the Break Effect set or the Champion of Streetwise Boxing set. And if you guys did enjoy my Sushang guide and my tips I have for using her, make sure to subscribe button for more Honkai Star Rail guides. I will be releasing more character guides in the upcoming days. And I hope all of you have a nice one. And for all of you who want Sushang, Sushang wanters will be Sushang havers, as long as you manifest it and believe that you will get this character here. Also, I think if you say Phoenix 3 times before summoning, then you will immediately get her. So take that tip and use it as you will. Hope you all have a nice one. Bye!